I would like to welcome you all to the first entry of my short story series titled A Heart's Desire. I do appreciate you all for coming through to check it out. I hope you guys enjoy what you're listening to. And if you have not subscribed yet, please go down to the bottom and do so. I do ask that you guys stick around to the end. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Her fast-paced footsteps hitting the pavement echoed through the streets in constant rhythm. You would think someone was in hot pursuit, but as she looked back, no one could be seen, even with the light of day rippling through. Only her rapid inhales and exhales were keeping her company. The brief thought of screaming out for someone to help crossed her mind like a shooting star striking the night sky, but to do so would be in vain. Just a little further, she thought, as a trickle of sweat fell into her eye. The powerful sound of a gunshot sliced through all her emotion and pain for just a quick second, causing her dark brown lace front weave to obstruct her vision as she quickly turned her head. She stumbled but wouldn't fall. Running with nothing on but a red bra half torn, one high heel on her left foot, a bleach-stained green and white shirt, and a face flooded with blood. A second shot sounded off, but she was numb to it this time. All she could focus on was what lied in front of her. She longed for it and could see a distorted shape of it, but the closer she seemed to get, the blurrier it became to make out. Her tears could only wash so much of the blood away. The pain and sorrow seemed to slow down her pace, yet none of it stopped her from moving forward. She pressed on, step after step, breath after breath. The night seemed to feel like an unusual Saturday, young and restless, with nothing to lose. A strong sense of carelessness and freedom lingered in the wind like an autumn leaf falling from a tree, and time seemed to matter to no one. Only fun and good feels. The people of Hampton seemed to always walk around blindfolded and smiling, bathing in the optimism of hope that they looked for but could never find. Everyone except for her. She somehow seemed to draw the sword from the stone of life, doing the impossible, week in and week out. She owned a house but could never call it her home. No, her home was the stage, and the people and bright lights were the four walls that made her feel comfort. She drove an '87 Honda Accord, blue on the outside with gray interior, but music happened to be her real method of transportation, and the microphone was the keys. She would welcome any listening ear to ride along, but most of the time they wouldn't have a choice in the matter. No one could explain it, but that was her special power. Once you heard the first note float from her lips to your ears, you were instantly hooked. No problem stood a chance against her, for they would all be wiped away. Imagine your one place of pure serenity and beauty. She could take you there. Her existence happened to be one of the few good things about the nearly rundown city. It's almost as if she was put there to incorporate a touch of beauty and goodness in a place where you wouldn't find it anywhere else. Most men would be intimidated by her talent and looks, keeping them from ever approaching her to ask her her name, so they would only look on and imagine what her name could be. Sasha, Lila, or maybe Aria. Those were the names that crossed their minds to go along with the smiles that crossed their faces. Yet if any of them mustered up the courage to ask, she would tell them that her name was taken. Unless you were a man who showed interest in more than what she wore and how she looked, you'd be lucky enough for her to tell you that her name was Jade. Jade Jensen. She would often always open up her sets with, "Hi, my name is Jade, and I would like to welcome you all to Club Parish." Here's where she displayed her gift to the world, or at least the world that existed as far as her voice could reach. The people of Hampton needed to look no further than Club Parish to find what they needed on any given day. It housed the good with the worst and the crappy with the ones who were on their way. Very few lights illuminated the ceiling, but it was just enough to see who was right in front of you. Round tables flooded the floor almost 3 feet apart, leaving just enough room to walk without bumping into the people sitting down. The bar stayed lit with men and women who haven't been asked to take off yet. Most of them were always looking to quench that thirst. You know, the one that builds up from life's repetitive blows, but never seems to get quenched. Dark brown hardwood covered the floors, along with a few empty cups that hadn't been thrown away. There was also a small space right in front of the stage for those who wanted to dance. It just so happened to make a very subtle semicircle with the tables. But the thing that stood out the most was the lightly blue tinted black light that shined from the center of the ceiling. It seemed somewhat out of place, but happened to match the Club Parish sign outside of the club. The light was said to make you feel like you were high in the clouds, if you wanted to look at it that way. She would start off her musical performance a little different this time. The melody was a bit familiar, yet the lyrics were something else altogether. At this moment, as her voice began to project, a spotlight beamed down on the top of her tan-colored straight-back micro braids, making it feel as though she was the only person in the room. A full band then followed behind her, playing along, causing the other lights to shine down on them as well. A keyboardist, a drummer, a lead guitarist, and a bass player. They were all in sync, lifting the room straight off the ground. The bar seemed to no longer hold anyone who was thirsty. The tables and chairs were no longer planted on the floor. The lights brightened up the room like pulling back the curtains during daybreak, and if you happened to close your eyes, you would swear you were on another planet. Their list of songs lasted just about around 15 minutes, but that didn't matter to anyone listening. A good time is all they wanted. Applause rang out as the band played their last note, bringing everyone who weren't dancing onto their feet. You could still feel the high from the performance making its way throughout the room. Jade placed her mic onto the stand as she thanked the people listening. "Thank you, Parish, and thank this amazing band," she said as she turned around to face the band members, clapping slightly with a big smile. She then turned back to face the audience. They all showered her with wide expressions of love and gratitude, as if she hadn't been singing for them week in and week out for the last year. Yet Jade could do nothing but appreciate the showing of favor from them. She was then helped down from the stage wearing one of her favorite dresses that had a skirt which stopped just above her knees. It was dark purple with a single strap that went over her right shoulder. The same colored heels covered her feet as she swam through the pool of admirers who wouldn't help but tell her how amazing she sounded. She would respond with a thank you and a smile as always. The bar seemed to be mere inches away as Jade prepared to order her usual. "Malibu," said Jade as the bartender cut her off. "Malibu cocktail, right?" he said as he handed her the drink. He then pointed to a mysterious woman in a long gray trench coat sitting at the other end of the bar, legs crossed, drinking a drink on the rocks. Jade hesitated for a second but nodded with a smile as she sipped her drink, thanking the woman. The woman smiled back as she drank from her own glass. Jade then tilted her head back to take a sip, eyes closed due to how amazing it felt going down. It let off a feeling of being lifted into the sky, not with wings, but as though God himself had gifted her the ability to grace the clouds with a single touch. Time no longer existed, or rather it didn't matter to her if it did or didn't. Her heartbeat seemed to be moving 1,000 miles a second, and she could see all the good, the bad, and everything in between in her life. She couldn't explain it, but something seemed to be different this time. She couldn't put her finger on it at first, but something was off. When she finally managed to open her eyes, her glass was empty, but she could only remember taking that first sip She shifted her eyes over to the end of the bar, only to notice that the woman in the trench coat was no longer sitting there. She looked down at her glass, then back at the empty seat where the lady sat, then back at the glass again. Jade then quickly put the glass down and walked away, preparing to leave for the night. She would only show up on the nights she had to sing, which was once a week. But Jade returned the next 3 nights in hopes that she may see the woman in the trench coat again. Luck didn't seem to be in her favor, however, because each visit was like a missed shot at a target. For she couldn't tell what it was, but she knew something had to have been placed inside of her drink only a few nights ago. She finally decided to ask the bartender, feeling a slight sense of embarrassment, but he could barely remember seeing the mysterious woman due to how many people come in and out of the club. She sat down and waited for a while, ordering 3 glasses of her usual in hopes that the woman might show up again. Once the 4th glass of Malibu cocktail hit the counter, she noticed that no matter how much she drank, she couldn't get that feeling back from the other night. Jade had gained a thirst that she could not quench. On the 5th night, she returned to notice a woman wearing a trench coat sitting at the bar facing away from her, holding a drink in her right hand. Jade then proceeded to approach her with nothing but a face full of hope. I appreciate you guys for everyone who managed to stick around until the very end. That was only part 1. So part 2 will be coming as soon as I can get it out. So once again, I appreciate you guys for sticking around. Have a good one. Thank you.